Welcome to MagnetiK Mumma, where curious parents grow, connect, and raise emotionally resilient families. Thank you so much for being here. Now it's time to take a nice, big, deep breath because you are exactly where you're meant to be. Hello and welcome back to MagnetiK Mumma. It feels so lovely to be sitting here behind the mic again. I know it's been a hot minute and I'm here to explain. So if you have been a part of my MagnetiK Mumma community for a while now, you may have noticed that I've been a bit quieter over the past few months. And today, rather than pretending otherwise, I wanted to begin exactly there. Not because I haven't had anything to say, because if anyone who knows me, I have always got something to say, even if you don't want to hear it. Actually, it's been quite the opposite. I've been living the very thing I teach. I know. And sometimes it's hard to take your own advice. Anyway, let me explain. Today's episode is really just a conversation about what's been happening. And as usual, it's not about perfection. It's not about polished answers. Just some of the reflections from a season, that being winter, that has been a little bit challenging, if I'd say so myself. It stretched me, but also reminded me of something I think we've forgotten as a society. And I want to start with a question. Have you ever noticed that we judge ourselves by summer standards, even when we're living in winter? Because if you have, I want you to stop, because I think winter asks us of us a different thing. I think winter asks us to actually slow down, especially if you're living in the southern hemisphere, in the southern countries where it's cold, dark, cold, rainy, all the things. And if you're like me and caught yourself calling your own internal dialogue, telling yourself that you're lazy when really winter is kind of asking us to rest, like the bears in hibernation. Not that we have bears in Australia, but you know, the animals that sort of just, whoa, what goes in hibernate? Like the snakes, the lizards, the frogs. They all just kind of go and like hide underground. And if you're like me, if you do hibernate and you're not doing all the things that you normally do, you start telling yourself maybe you're falling behind. And again, I think winter is asking us perhaps different things, like how to conserve our energy. And yet, even if it's asking us that, maybe we're still trying to somehow convince ourselves if we're not doing all the things, we're failing. So I've been deliberating on this. And maybe the problem isn't that we're doing winter wrong or that I've been doing winter wrong. Maybe we're expecting ourselves to bloom in a season that is designed for growing roots. Nature always teaches us things we actually need to know on this planet. So that thought has stayed with me all winter. Curious to know what your thoughts over winter might have been. But in that situation of, not doing all the things, this winter, therefore, has looked very different for me. Normally, I am someone who gets up early, I exercise, I get things done, I keep moving, and I guess I've always associated that version of myself with discipline. Now, I'm not the most disciplined person, but I do like a bit of routine, and it does help me feel like I'm staying on track. But this year, I found myself sleeping literally like a hibernating frog. I slept in more than I usually would. My fitness routine slipped, and definitely I almost immediately found that familiar voice yapping in the background telling me, "You're lazy. You're letting yourself go, you little lazy blah, blah, blah. You should be doing more." I know you all know what I'm talking about. I know all the mums and dads out there have heard those internal words before because they follow us around like our little kids humbugging us. So I do believe you've heard that voice before yourself. If you haven't, lucky you. But what's fascinating is, despite sleeping more, despite exercising less, not exercising at all, but just less, I have kind of found myself actually becoming a little bit more emotionally available. I have felt a little bit more calmer sometimes, a little bit more patient sometimes, a little bit more regulated, and allowing myself to be dysregulated as well. But in doing that, it allows me to create space for awareness and building that recognition of regulation. Anyway, in reflecting upon that and turning down the noisy and annoying whining voice in the back of my head that's like, "You're lazy, you're not doing enough. Get off, you lazy bugger." Um, Turning that down and sitting in the it's okay to have a bit more sleep phase has actually cracked open this little door of allowing space to be more capable of responding to all the hoo-ha that life has been asking of me. And that has really challenged my beliefs because somewhere along the way, I'd linked, and I know this resonates with many, I've linked productivity with worthiness. And that's a hard one to untangle. So listen in. And I have always thought the harder I pushed, the better I was doing. Now, anyone been in burnout? You've probably been there, done that, got the t-shirts. Well, that's not where I want to head. Up to you where you want to head. But for me, going back down the burnout path is something I am actively trying to avoid. And I think having a little sleep in this winter has been helping me not burn out, especially when my life has been super busy and hectic. And whilst maybe I haven't been appearing here in internet MagnetiK Mumma land, I have been busily working behind the scenes, building roots. So life was asking something different of me this winter. And I think this is what was really happening. From the outside, it may have looked online like, where's she gone? Not slowed down, but what's she doing? But the truth behind the scenes, I was learning a completely new business after purchasing an inch body contour. This took me down a very windy road of learning new systems, making decisions on my own every day, which I'm kind of loving, but at the start, it's a bit overwhelming. And just trying to find my feet as a solopreneur, which is wearing every single beanie or hat under the sun that is involved in a business. And at the same time, my home life kept moving. Tween emotions, teen emotions, friendship, blah, 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 sisterly disagreements / punch up, fight, arguments, all the things. School sports, school holidays, sleepovers, catching buses, school reports, mental load that so many of us quietly carry. So life wasn't really slower or quieter. In fact, it's been a bit more fuller and overflowing. And the difference was my energy needed to go somewhere different. And that's when I realized something. Hibernating doesn't mean you're not doing anything. Sometimes it simply means you're directing your energy towards what matters most. And for maybe normal people, that sounds like, yeah, duh, no shit, Sherlock. But for people like me who have a million things going on and ideas and, kids stuff, family stuff, home stuff, business stuff, my mind's like, so this winter, I've had to rein it all in and, bunker down and focus. So I'm learning. And as I reflected on all of this, I remembered a little season in my life that I hadn't forgotten, but I just hadn't gone back to it for a while. And I'd like to share a little sneaky peek thing with you. So I was a 24-year-old idealistic adventurer, I want to say. And I was backpacking through India, saved up lots of money, worked out bush, did all the things to prepare myself for this exciting adventure with literally a very empty backpack, fisherman pants, and some Birkenstocks. So off I went on my own on my first trip overseas by myself as a 24-year-old. I had travelled all around Australia by myself, but not by myself, with friends and here and there and different things. Anywho, I digress. This was my first trip overseas, and one unexpected turn led to another, and surprise, surprise, all my plans changed, and I found myself in Hyderabad. India had been the destination. Hyderabad had been a little stopover, which turned into a lot longer than that. But this is where I found myself living within a Steiner community. Rudolf Steiner, if anyone doesn't know, is a philosopher. He has a whole ecosystem of schooling, philosophy, health, a way of living, all the things. Look him up. It's an incredible way to live. Interesting, super interesting. So I found myself in this Steiner community in Hyderabad, and I had the incredible privilege of spending time alongside an anthroposophical pediatrician who was the most phenomenal woman I've ever met in my life. Full respect, Dr. Lakshmi Prasanna. And she had her own pediatric hospital. Yes, her own hospital. Then she also had a beautiful healing center, which was a collaborative, holistic space that was working with children and families who were living with autism. Now, back up here. This is 2004, people. Nobody back then was really connecting the dots, other than they thought, which was it? One of the vaccines, measles, mumps, rubella, was causing autism. Yeah, different story. Doesn't matter. But no one was really joining the dots between what people were consuming and how that was connected to our brains, our behaviors. I mean, obviously there was some very smart people who had studied these things, but no one, the internet barely existed. I think I had a Nokia phone and I was traveling on a lonely planet, which I didn't even read, by the way. If I had, I would have saved myself a lot of hassle. Anywho, led me to here. So I followed this gorgeous, incredibly wise human around like a little puppy slash apprentice. I was a baby nurse, a couple years of nursing behind me, very idealistic views and an adventurous spirit. So I was curious. I was watching, I was listening, I was learning. And back in 2004, before long before gut health, nervous system, environmental medicine, or even neurodiversity were common in conversation. These people in this community were talking about it. And what fascinated me wasn't just what they were teaching, it was how they were living. The seasons mattered. The food changed with seasons. Daily rhythms changed. The pace of life changed. Children weren't expected to function the same way every day of the year. Families weren't expected to function the same way either. Everything honored nature. Nothing fought against it. I, okay. Side note, I even participated in a teacher learning course where I learned watercolor painting, which they teach to very new children that come to school. And it was a beautiful, beautiful lesson. And it sounds small, but those things are what I remember learning about education. Like, this is before I worked in schools. This is before I um, even worked in emergency departments. Like, had I been in emergency? No, I'd worked in ICU. Anywho, again, I digress. What I remember learning was that education wasn't simply about knowledge. Okay. It was about observation, being present, demonstrating patience, learning to notice, learning to trust timing. And at the time, I had no idea those experiences would shape the way that I think about health for the rest of my life. So back to winter in Australia, 2026. Those memories came flooding back. Actually, yeah. Yeah, here's a picture of me in India that wasn't when I was with the Steiner community, but it is shortly after this. I travelled to a place called Hospit and stayed with another family and went to a festival, and I met these young budding artists at a college, and they asked me to sit and, so they could draw my portrait. So this is me in India, 2004 in Hospit, shortly after all this hanging out with the anthroposophical doctor. Anyway, what winter has been teaching me in this season of life is that nature never apologizes for being winter. Trees don't feel guilty when they lose their leaves, and the earth doesn't rush to spring. Nothing in nature questions whether it's productive enough. Winter isn't failing, winter is preparing. And maybe that's where we've drifted away from nature, especially as women, especially as parents, especially as business owners, where we've convinced ourselves, and I don't know that the system is actually discouraging this either, but we as a society have convinced ourselves that we should operate like it's spring every day of the year, always producing, always achieving, always growing, always saying yes. But in reality, if we look to our good old Mother Earth, nature doesn't really work that way. And maybe as animals living on this planet, in this ecosystem, we're not meant to either. So invisible growth, in my view, in this season of what I'm learning is still growth. Roots are growing beneath the surface and matter just as much as the flowers that everyone can see. So in parenting, this lesson has changed the way I've been showing up with my girls. Well, you know, how I think I would like to show up for my girls, because actually doing it and saying it and doing it are two different things. And my intention is to show up differently with my girls. And when I catch myself not doing things that I've been talking, I have to reel it in, sit down, take a few deep breaths, and realign and try again. Because one thing I've realized is that they don't actually need the busiest version of me. And let me tell you, there has been some complaining about me buying a business and being busier than I have been for a long time. And that adjustment has caused a few little bumps and jumps around the place. So in amongst the busyness, they actually don't need the busy mum, although I do think it's very helpful for them to see that I am more than their cleaning, washing, and housemaid machine. But yeah, what they really need in reality is the most regulated version of myself. And that has been incredibly confronting because trying to be regulated when you're busy and chaotic is quite a challenge. So I used to think being a good mum meant doing more, or it's kind of like, doing everything, but not for them in terms of like, you know, doing things for them, but doing more in the sense of making sure they have options and opportunities to do what they want to do. So usually that means more Ubering, mum Ubering around the place, organising more play dates or sleepovers, helping more. This year I'm not on any school committees or not, and there's a sense of guilt and I could, whatever, but at the moment that's not where I need to be. Fixing more, letting my girls sort out their battles rather than trying to step in and do it for them at school, with teachers, with friends, all the things. But this winter has reminded me that one of the greatest gifts that I can give to my children is my own regulated nervous system. And they come home carrying friendship worries or disappointment or big emotions. They don't need me to solve everything. They need me to stay steady enough to sit beside them because, and I've said this a few times before, connection really does come before correction. And like I said, that is a lot easier to remember in theory or to say than it is on a Tuesday, let's say Wednesday afternoon, when you got to run to footy training pickup, dinner still needs to be cooked and the fire hasn't been started and everybody's emotions are running high. So that's where practice lives. Not being perfect in the morning, not in meditation retreat, but in ordinary, everyday family life. So if there's one thing that this winter, this season has taught me, it's this. Maybe the quiet seasons are where we become the person who can hold everything the next season asks of us. So if you're listening today and you've been feeling guilty for needing more sleep, for saying no, for pulling back, for protecting your energy, I seriously, seriously hope that this little conversation gives you permission to stop measuring yourself by someone else's season. Nature never apologizes for winter, so we don't have to either. I would genuinely love to hear from you. Tell me, what has this winter been teaching you? And what's been feeling the hardest in your family right now with tweens and teens? And what conversations would you love us to explore together in the next few months? Come and leave a comment on the Substack, send me a message or reply to a newsletter. I read every single one. So thank you for being here. Thank you for coming back into this space with me. I have a feeling the next season of MagnetiK Mumma is going to be our most meaningful yet because lots and lots of cool things are happening. So until next time, take a big deep breath. Be gentle with yourself and remember, invisible growth is still growth. Thanks so much for listening. I love having you here. So if this conversation resonated with you, let's keep it going. Come and join me on Substack.
Or if you want, just share it with another parent who could use a little encouragement today. But until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and remember, little moments create lasting change.